Sonic, the heart of your system.
Hi and welcome back to a new video. About a week ago we were analyzing the RTX 3080 Tough Gaming, which is this one, and in that video I also announced that we will take a close look at the shunt modding and also volt modding if we can. Meanwhile, I acquired a 3090 Tough Gaming, which first I thought would be kind of the same PCB. I mean, it's kind of obvious that it would not be the 100% identical PCB because of the NVLink connector on top right here, which is missing on the 3080. But otherwise I thought they would be identical. They're like 99% the same, but there are slight differences between the two cards. But I'm going to show this in detail, and we're going to check what we have to do with those shunt resistors, because we have 5 in total. We will mod all of them and just see what happens, and then we're also going to do volt modding. Let's go. Let's check out quickly the difference between the 3090 and 3080 Tough Gaming. If you're not sure on the first look which card is which one, just pay attention to the NVLink connector. That is always the 3090 card. And on the 3080, just starting off with the shunt resistor area, you can see those 5 shunt resistors. That is the top right one, which we already modded. And if we're checking the same area on the 3090, we can see identical placement of shunt resistors. The PGS Con1 connector will be important for volt modding because that's where we will attach the Elmore EVC. On the 3080 there is some solder tin already in the holes. On the 3090 the PGS Con1 is empty. Will make the placement slightly easier. Backside makes differentiating between the 3090 and 3080 much easier. We have the additional memory modules on the 3090 on the back because of the 24 GB of memory. On the 3080 you will probably remember that I was talking very positively about those voltage measuring points on the back. For whatever reason they are not present on the 3090. I have no idea why Asus decided not to have them on the 3090. That kind of sucks. I mean, the base must be the same PCB, but they're not present on this card. So you could see the difference is very tiny between the 3080 and 3090. It's just slight differences between the PCB. If you're wondering about water cooler placement, I think the same block should work on both cards. The difference on MOSFETs and memory and everything on the front side, I think there is no difference, should be the same. For the first step, we will put this small connector on the 3090 to be able to attach the Elmore EVC. This will hopefully allow voltage control on the 3090. And then in the second step we will do the shunt mod and see if we can or what we can change. Let's go. In case you're wondering why I know that I can use this connector for the Elmore EVC, I just checked the datasheet of the GPU voltage controller and figured out that SCA and SDL, the data connection of I to C, is just sitting on the side right here. And then measured through all those resistors, figured out that SCA and SDL are going to those connectors, and we have additional ground right here, and then perfect for us. Now we're just attaching the EVC2. By the way, the EVC2 is not available anymore, but there will be the EVC2S, which is like a light and even cheaper version. I think it's available for pre-order on the Elmore website. Maybe just get it because it's such a beautiful tool. Now simply attach it. Yeah, I will have to check if I can still put on the cooler, otherwise I will have to place this thing on the backside. Well, obviously it did not fit. It's one of those cases where I didn't think enough at the first place, but now just switched it around and the connector is sitting on the back. And this is looking promising. In the EVC2 software, find devices, on top I detected the UP9512 controller over I to C. And on the left we have 3 controllers in total, just starting off with the bottom one should be the easiest. With 1.36 volt, I guess this should be the memory voltage of the GDDR6 memory. And then we have one that is currently switching between 0 and 0.7 volt, could be some power saving thing. And another voltage with about 0.8 volt, I guess that should be the GPU voltage. One thing I have to correct is the connector. First I thought that the top part would be ground and the bottom 2 should be SCA and SDL for the I2C bus, but then figured out that the middle one is ground and the outer ones are SCA and SDL. Just switched them around and now it's working. I will now take out the card from the test bench and add some voltage measuring points on the back, simply because just don't trust software, and it's a lot easier if you adjust the voltage in the software and then check on your multimeter if everything is applied correctly. all the voltage measurement points are now attached. Bottom one right here is MSVDD. That one should be the GPU voltage. On the 3080, this measurement point was somewhere above here, but I figured out that this empty solder pad was also connected with the GPU voltage right on the back. So that should be GPU voltage, and up here we have memory voltage. It's now assembled and running. Idle voltage of the GPU about 0.77 volt. If I now adjust a GPU voltage offset of 50 millivolt in the EVC software. Yep, can see it's working fine. That is great. Stock the GPU is running somewhere between 1785 and 1845 megahertz. Typically 61-62 degrees Celsius on the GPU, 1800 RPM on the fan. Board power 350 watt, GPU power about 160, power SRC 110, NVDC power draw 85, PCI Express slot 60, 8-pin 1 150, 8-pin 2 140 watt, 100% TDP, and about 0.9 volt on the GPU. First step will be modding the two 8-pin connectors and see what happens. With a bit of fine tuning, we have pretty much 2 GHz stable on the card. That is impressive. Adjusted the fan speed a little bit higher, so it's running 2600 RPM. It's getting noisy, but it's still okay, I guess. Board power draw now 260 watt. PCI Express slot power is 75 watt. We didn't touch that one, so that should be the correct reading. 8-pin 1 is 100 watt, and because we were reading only 50%, it's 200 watt real. 8-pin power 2 is 90 watt, and in reality that's 180 watt. Means combined in total we have PCI Express power draw of about 390 watt over the power connectors, and then additional 75 watt over the slot. Let's try mod this single shunt resistor, which is connected to the one above of the right 8-pin connector. Not sure where this one goes. I guess it's connected to GPU voltage, but we will certainly see it in GPU Z once it's modded. Modding the third shunt resistor dropped the measured GPU chip power draw from 220 to about 160 watt. Everything else stayed the same clockwise, no difference. Let's move on and mod the next one. The fourth shunt resistor has to be somehow connected with NVDC and power SRC. On stock this was about 88 watt, which should be in line with the 50%. Power SRC was 115, is now at roughly 50 watt, also somehow in line. And after modding the first two shunt resistors, the 8-pin power connectors, those were dropping down to 0. Now they are back, which is interesting. But just clockwise, we're still at about the 2 GHz mark. Nothing else changed except for those two readings. Time to mod the last and the fifth shunt resistor. The sixth one, which is sitting next to the PCI Express connector, we won't touch. Now that is getting kind of interesting. Clockwise, still the same area, board power draw still the same. Now the GPU chip power draw dropped down from about 170 to 120. MVDDC still stayed the same, but power SRC doubled. Could be that the two shunt resistors on the bottom left, the last two we modded, are somehow in a relation to each other, and the last one caused the GPU to drop down lower but increase the power SRC. That's interesting. The last thing left to do is increase the voltage with the Elmore EVC. 60 millivolts seems to be kind of the sweet spot. If I increase it further, the clock starts to drop. Probably it's getting too warm. But check out the clock once I'm starting up the benchmark. The numbers I saw in my previous tests were quite impressive. Check this out, 2100 megahertz. I mean, you can see that this is just temperature dependent, because once it's hitting like 50 degrees, it starts to clock down slightly, but it's still 2100 on air. Holy crap. To sum up the data, shunt modding the first two resistors, the one directly underneath the 8-pin connectors, definitely helps because you're unlocking the whole card power limit. But adding shunt mods or shunt resistors to the other shunt resistors, like number 3, 4, 5, didn't really do much. I think the third one was still worth it, but 4 and 5 didn't really do anything. I mean, it was dropping down the reading in GPU-C, but it didn't change the clock behavior. That's why I'm not sure if I would recommend doing those mods. But in general, I could also notice that GPU temperature is everything. When the card is sitting a long time in idle and the cooler has like, I don't know, 35, 40 degrees Celsius, and you fire up the benchmark, with those mods applied to the card, it was boosting to like 2140 megahertz for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, then drop down 2110, drop down to 2080. I also want to highlight that the clocks you saw in the end with like 2100 were not fully gaming stable. If I was running this for long time testing, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it sometimes crashed, which means that you probably need an offset of like 20 megahertz less to have it fully stable, at least with the air cooler. If you would run this with water cooling, should probably be stable with this setup. But also that is an individual GPU, doesn't apply to all GPUs. Could be that yours is much worse, maybe even better. No clue about that. But as summary, it's interesting that you can still do something with this generation, because at launch a lot of people were worried that the cards are running so much at the edge that you cannot do anything anymore, like no overclocking. But if you apply those mods and if you keep your card cool, there's definitely something you can do. All right, thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye bye.